Welcome back to the LDS Player for another Garden Warfare 2 video. Even though I just got Battle for Neighborville recently, Garden Warfare 2 seems like a whole different game series due to the interchangement of variants for perks. So I will continue making Garden Warfare 2 videos in the future. Anyway, in this video I will be going through all the Super Brainz variants from worst to best. Remember, this is simply my overall opinion and it will heavily vary between other people's opinions. Anyway, let's get right into this video. Ranked at the last spot, number 5, we have both the original Super Brainz and the Party Brainz. Yes, I know it's kind of cheating to put them both in the same position, but they are so similar, and even though the Party Brainz is literally an upgrade in some cases, the advantages are really not that drastic. Both of these superheroes are incredibly powerful at melee range, as they can do 85 damage in a single combo attack. If you smoothly combine their normal attacks with their insane abilities, you can destroy any target with ease. Also, be sure to utilize their heroic beam often, as it can do around 7 damage per tick for range damage. This is incredibly useful when at medium range and when on low health. Super Brainz cannot use party mode like Party Brainz can, which increases the speed of punching, damage resistance, and overall damage. However, Party Brainz is extremely hard to unlock unless you have a bunch of friends to play infinity time with and to have a heap of time to waste. So Super Brainz is much more common to use. Overall, Super Brainz and Party Brainz are very powerful at vanquishing enemies at close range, but they are not as useful as the other variants. Nonetheless, they are extremely powerful, and if you plan to use them, make sure to know what you're doing. If you have Party Brainz and you can take a bit of risk, however, use them over Super Brainz. At the number 4 spot is Cosmic Brainz. From this point on, it literally took me over half an hour to decide the rankings, as all the other variants are insanely strong in the right hands. Don't get me wrong, I love this variant, but it's just slightly weaker than the other superhero characters. Cosmic Brainz is a very interesting character, as it is the only zombie that can render a plant unrevivable. It is also one of the only zombies who can charge an attack, which is essential to this variant's playstyle. Best of all, Cosmic Brainz has a very powerful range attack. His Cosmic Beam does as much damage as the Foot Soldier if not too far away. However, Cosmic Brainz must be used correctly to effectively exploit his strengths, making him harder than other variants, therefore making him much weaker in the wrong hands. Let me give you some tips. First off, be sure to make use of his fully charged punch from behind enemies to do tons of damage and provide a chance for an unrevivable vanquish. Second of all, Cosmic Brainz has the highest DPS if he only does a half charge punch, so use a half charge punch the most often other than when you need to quickly finish off an enemy with an uncharged punch, or use his full punch to send the enemy to the void. Last of all, his beam is really powerful if at the right range, and is quite easily the best beam of the Super Brainz variants. Overall, Cosmic Brainz is really good at taking enemies off an objective and getting a great amount of kills, but he seems awkward to play and requires a bit of skill to pull off most effectively. Falling right into the middle at number 3 is Electro Brainz. Electro Brainz is a master at crowd control, unlike other Super Brainz variants that are mostly useful for hit and run playstyles or ambushing enemies. Electro Brainz has insane damage capability with his Electro Beam, especially in modes like Turf Takeover where enemies are all grouped together on an objective. This form of electric damage is one of the best in the game, so be sure to use Electro Beam often to maximize your damage. Electro Brainz can also punch up to a total of 5 times, unlike most other variants who can only punch 3 or less, so he can get up to 90 damage with a chain of 5 punches, with 3 of the 5 punches also dealing electric damage. However, due to his electric damage, he is a bit weaker with his attack. Each punch is considerably weaker than the original Super Brainz, and even though he can execute 5 of them, his entirety of 5 punches are barely stronger than the original Super Brainz 3 punches with just 5 damage more. Due to this, he is much better using his beam to do electric damage, only using his fists when enemies get in really close. Overall, Electro Brainz is the master of crowd control of all the superheroes, but does not have the single target damage proficiency that is a keystone in the playstyle of the Super Brainz. Ranked at the number 2 spot is Breakfast Brainz. Just to note, remember, this was after the buff 2 years ago, unlike most videos, which I didn't even know this game existed 2 years ago. So Breakfast Brainz has been way better since then, as basically his damage has been doubled. Breakfast Brainz is very speedy, as every time he gets a kill with his breakfasts, he gets a temporary speed boost. This can be amazing if utilized before needing to close into an objective or chasing down a weakened enemy. Breakfast Brainz is pretty cool in that form. I mean, I really enjoy the playstyle and rapid fire punches of this character, and I enjoy that his alternate fire is not a beam, but Breakfast Brainz is not the most powerful variant of all. His breakfasts end up damaging more like a suppressive fire weapon, if not on the highest peak of damage, so you have to consider all the damage you're doing. Breakfast Brainz can also not kill enemies with a quick ambush, as he does overtime damage instead of quick bursts of damage like the other Super Brainz variants. This is really good, however, if you're fighting hordes of enemies, but not so good if you want a single quick kill. Overall, I really enjoy the speed boost and the primary and secondary fire of the Breakfast Brainz, but he is not as good as dealing quick damage or creating ambushes against enemy team as other Super Brainz variants. Trumping over the other variants at the #1 spot is Toxic Brainz. Toxic Brainz is one of the most high-risk, high-reward characters I've ever played as, up there with characters like Doomfist and Princess Leia in Overwatch and Star Wars Battlefront 2 respectively. I really enjoy challenging but powerful characters like these aforementioned, so Toxic Brainz barely makes it out on top. Toxic Brainz is extremely powerful in its Toxic Overload form, capable of doing 180 damage with just a single combo punches, or hundreds of damage at mid-range shortly with his Toxic Beam. He can also deal toxic damage to all nearby enemies and inflict it with his punches and his beam, allowing low-health superheroes to fire his beam at a far-range enemy and slowly shave their health away into nothing. Nevertheless, he has some downsides. Toxic Brainz is quite weak while outside of his Toxic Overload form, only doing 50 damage with his combo 3 punches, and a measly 4 damage per tick with his beam, even at melee range. Also, his legendary mode does not keep its charge upon death, even if revived, and even though it is easier to charge up because it is reliant on landing punches and not getting eliminations, it makes the Toxic Beam almost worthless to use unless in Toxic Overload or at critical health when you need to do range damage. Overall, Toxic Brainz is one of the most, if not the most, damaging subclasses in the game, but he requires a lot of skills to maximize his potential and land punches to start Toxic Overload. Thank you all for watching this video. Please be sure to return to this channel for more Garden Warfare 2 and Battle for Neighborville videos in the future. Once I finally get Commander Corrin, I will be making an all Corrins ranked video after a bit, as I have already played him a ton with Hero Showcase. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe, as your support is always very welcomed. Well everybody, I'm out.